I'd like to call this meeting to order and establish that we do have a quorum. This meeting of the Seguin Independent School District has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Opens Meeting Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. At this point, we'll stand and say our pledges to the United States and Texas flag. There it is. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, now for a moment of silence. All right, next up in our agenda is audience with the board, but we did not have anyone sign up or send in any comments for audience with the board. So we will go straight to the board workshop, and I'll be turning the meeting over to Ms. Robin Pompa. And first, Mr. Lewis, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to mute myself.
All right. Well, welcome everyone this evening. We're going to cover a lot of information this evening with Robin Popa from Pfluger Architects and Florin Popa from PB Group. They're going to review the AJB design. We're at, I believe 50% is about where we are. Is that correct? Yes, 50%.
50% design development, yep.
They have a presentation that'll kind of take you through from the beginning up through now. I did send you a lot of that presentation, but it was so big I couldn't email I couldn't email it all, so I had to cut out a few. Try to cut out a few of the boring slides, but there are some that are additionals slides that you'll see today as they go through that. Then they'll touch base a little bit on Jefferson as well, and where we are on that. So does anybody have any questions or comments before we get started? And before, I'm just going to turn it over to Robin. She will take the screen control and she will run the presentation. So if that's on the screen, if there's someone that needs to ask a question, and she's just going to pause every so often for questions and make sure there's opportunity that comes up as we move along, so we can make it as much like an open discussion as possible.
All right, very good. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thumbs up?
Yes.
All right, awesome. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Let me get it up into presentation mode. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Bill. President Thomas Jimenez, Board of Trustees, Dr. Gutierrez, senior staff that is present today, and any guests that might be listening on this video conferencing workshop. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for allowing us to come and present to you a couple of exciting projects that we're really excited about, the progress that they've made, and just kind of the design implications that these projects have, and we hope that you will find them exciting as well. As Bill mentioned, my name is Robin Popa. I'm with Pfluger Architects, and with me is Florin Popa with PB Group. So we are associated architects on these projects. And today we are just doing a general 2019 bond update specific to these, certainly the first two projects, and then I think depending on how time is running, we may cover the third project, but we're going to go through Briesemeister. That's going to take the majority of our time probably tonight. Jefferson Elementary, and then again, if we have time, we'll touch on the baseball and softball field complex. So moving into Breezy. So this is just a snapshot. You probably saw this at the last, or an iteration of this at the last board meeting. We are 100% complete with survey and pre-design. We are currently in the midst of design. We're about 39% of the way through the design and bid process. And as one would expect, we have not started construction yet. So we are exactly 0% of the way through with that phase. Just to take it back, way back when, we developed a long-range facility plan for all of your campuses throughout the district, and AJB was one of them. In fact, it was one of the most pressing campuses that the long-range facility plan group identified as needing some immediate action and improvements, and so it floated up to priority 1, and that's why it ended up being part of the bond election. But we didn't do everything that the facility team had possibly thought could be improved on the campus. We were pretty selective about what we wanted to do, and most of it focused around the building improvements as well as some infrastructure and parking improvements. So all of those two items that were on the bond election totaled $39 million. So when we started off conceptualizing what the improvements might be, we started by looking at what was existing and present in this region. And we took 2 tours. We went to 2 new middle schools at 2 different districts, and the 2 schools were of very different kind of configuration. So there was a lot for the attendees to respond to. Many of y'all were on the tour with us. So if you were, we thank you for your time dedicated for that day. This was done back in October of last year. So we had several folks from the district and central office staff. We had campus administration. We had teacher representatives with us. We had a couple of board members, some community members, some of whom I know are listening in right now. And then we also had a couple of folks from the design team as well. So our first stop was over at Resnik Middle School, which is in Southwest ISD school district. This was a school that is part of a joint site with a brand new high school. But I think what was interesting and what the group really saw when we went there is that Resnik Middle School is configured around the notion of grade level houses. So each separate grade has their own wing and their own kind of identity. They also, with that though, have minimal collaboration space. And a lot of this is just tied to that district's particular stance on efficiency and net to gross as far as circulation goes. But with doing that sort of configuration, it's a little bit harder to get that collaborative space designed in there. They did have a dedicated library, and when I say dedicated, I mean a little bit more traditional, meaning it has kind of walls to separate itself and close itself off. And you'll see in the next example, it's kind of a different concept of a library. They did, though, have distributed teacher resources throughout the campus, which meant that for any given teacher, wherever she was at in the school, there was always a workroom and a restroom that was pretty close at hand for herself or for himself. They had a consolidated and a concentrated administration wing. Both of the schools that we toured have this, but it was a talking point that we discussed with the group because there are examples of schools that have distributed administration where the front office may only be, maybe a quarter to a half of the staff that would normally be in there, but everybody else is dispersed throughout the campus, like your APs or something. They had a secured vestibule and a secured entry, but the front entrance was recessed from the face of the school. So there was a very prominent canopy to lead you there, but if the canopy hadn't been there, the entry might be a little difficult for somebody to find. Other things that was really nice is they have a secured plaza courtyard area so that students, can y'all see my mouse moving? Yes, okay, good. This kind of peachy area is the cafeteria, and so when students are done eating lunch, they can immediately go outside and burn off a little energy playing some basketball or just hanging out with friends. They're outside, but they're not off campus because it's all secured. And the other thing that was really evident over at Resnik is it has very clean and clear lines of sight. So if you stand in one side of the corridor, you can see all the way down practically to the other side of the school. So these are just some images of what we saw out there. The left two images are one of the grade level houses. The top middle image is that outdoor plaza courtyard. The bottom is their library. And then the top right image is that canopy leading into the main entry. And then the bottom right is that secured vestibule and main entry area. So then after that, we drove north to the other side of Bexar County and went to Comal ISD's Pieper Ranch Middle School, which is a very different concept. Still a new build, but still very different. So instead of having grade level houses very clearly identified, they have a flexible classroom configuration. So in any given year, the classrooms can be configured by grade level, or they can be configured differently, perhaps by subject matter. They have increased collaboration space because it was very much a design intent from this district from the get-go that collaboration space and project-based learning was going to be very fundamental and crucial for this campus. They have an open concept library. Now this is a library without walls, and that was a little departure from kind of a traditional sense, but again, the district wanted to push the envelope a little bit with this, and you'll see in the images that the library really is kind of open to the hallway. But with all of these nice things, there's some drawbacks too. They have fewer teacher resources available. They're either in the front office or in this other isolated area. So if you're a teacher who's in the middle over here, it might be a little hard to make it through the throngs of middle schoolers during passing period if you need to use the facilities. They also have a concentrated administration area. Their front entry, although it still has a secured vestibule, is a lot more prominent and evident than what we saw over at Resnik. Their outdoor student area is assembly focused rather than activity focused. And a lot of that is really just, it wasn't necessarily something that the district mandated from the beginning. It was a result of the terrain and the topography that that campus sits on. So these are some images from that school. The two images on the left are the collaboration areas, two different examples of that. The bottom one with the blue is some collaboration space right outside the science labs. The top middle image is that outdoor secured assembly focused amphitheater space, and you can see just the grade level change in that part of the hill country. It's inevitable. So we took advantage of that and made an amphitheater with it. The bottom middle image is the library. So you can see all along here, folks standing, that's a main circulation corridor. So the library is separated a little bit by some half walls, and it's about 2 steps lower than the floor of the corridor, but there's no sound isolation, so it's completely open. The top right image is the main entry, so really prominent, really evident about where to enter. And then the bottom right image was something that we saw at both schools, and it wasn't really something that we had thought about until it was commented upon repeatedly, that this notion of having kind of a half height wall between the gymnasium and a corridor was actually kind of a nice feature. It provided a little bit of a buffer space if there's a game going on, so people can walk there and not necessarily walk into the gym and interrupt a game. There's just a little bit of a nice breathing space, so to speak. So with all of the feedback that we got from the group, we kind of generated this checklist of which of those characteristics were important for Seguin ISD and more specifically for AJB. Grade level houses were important. We wanted to promote grade level identity, and with identity comes ownership, and with ownership comes pride. But there did need to be dedicated space for collaboration. I mean, that is the direction that education and even just workforce is moving. Dedicated library space, having a library that could be sound controlled, could be closed off, or even opened up independently of the rest of the school, that was important. So not an open concept library, but also distributing teacher resources and support spaces. It's important to support our teachers and make those facilities easy for them to access. A consolidated administration area and also a concentrated one. I think this is something that AJB currently suffers from, that they don't have simply enough space in their front office. And so because of that, a lot of those typical front office features are kind of spread throughout the school and basically wherever they can find some free room. And so really trying to make an effort to get all of those functions into one area. Having a prominent front entry and a secured vestibule. You know, the secured vestibule is par for the course nowadays, but having a very prominent front entry was very important for this group and for this project. Again, kind of AJB has suffered for a long time of having kind of a recessed, not prominent front entry. And so when somebody who's not familiar with the campus visits there, the first thing they see is the kitchen loading dock. And so really kind of making a flip and making sure that that very first impression that the school gives off is one that identifies an entry point, because that also goes a long way towards security. Having a secured outdoor area, which is more sport and activity focused, was important. You know, the notion of middle schoolers getting to blow off some steam right after lunch or right in the morning before they come in and sit down and focus is important. And then obviously, again, with middle schoolers, clear line of sights are also very important. So we went to the drawing board and we came up with about 4 different schemes, 4 different ways that we felt we could make improvements at AJB that tried to check as many of those boxes as possible. We met with a group of both campus representatives, district representatives, and kind of vetted through the pros and cons of all these schemes. We knew and we didn't expect that we were going to, you know, find the solution this very first time. And I think that was important, is that we just wanted to present something that would garner feedback. It would garner discussion, because the next time we came back, we had 2 more schemes that were refined versions of what we had had before. And what we ultimately decided as a group is that scheme 4 seemed to be the best fit of everything, with the exception of the fine arts department. They felt that the configuration in scheme 5 was better than scheme 4. So we literally just plucked the fine arts from scheme 5 and dropped it down into scheme 4. And that's how we started moving forward. And so with that, I'm going to kind of walk you through the floor plan. So this is kind of how we know AJB now. An older middle school that's had a couple of additions and renovations over the years. It's got the satellite science building that is not physically connected to the rest of the campus. But what we're hoping is that at the end of this project, this is what will result. And you can kind of see that red outline stays there, so you can see how much of the campus we're keeping all of it basically, and we're just being very careful with where we're doing additions and renovations. And so all the spaces in orange are some sort of educational focus, whether it's a general classroom or a science lab. Science is that darker orange. The really light orange over in here is special ed. The reddish color is CTE. Pink space is cafeteria and food service. Purple is fine arts. Green is athletics. The darker blue is library or collaboration space. And yellow is admin area. I'm going to go into each area with an enlarged plan, so I don't expect you to read what it says on the slide right now. Any questions so far? All right. So in the classroom houses, what we really tried to do was, again, kind of maintain that grade level alignment. Number one, to give them a sense of ownership and pride, but also there's a little bit of wanting to kind of isolate the grades one from another, you know, limited intermingling, so limited distractions and a lot more focus on subject matter and projects and coursework. This was a little bit of a departure from where we first set off, but integrated science within those classroom houses. Because if we're talking about trying to give 6th grade a house which they can see as a home, having them leave the wing to go to science just seemed counterintuitive to it. And so if we have the means available, bringing that science function into those classroom houses, we felt was a priority or a benefit. Teacher resources being close at hand. This teacher resource area is the same as the other classroom house I'm going to show you in a little bit. For this house, though, we were running out of room here just with some of the existing dimensions that we had to deal with, and we wanted to add some restrooms up here for students. So we put it down here in between the two classrooms. And I think one of the other things that was a nice bonus from putting it here is we were also able to add this conference room right here, which I was up at the TASA Midwinter Conference in January, and I got to hear Allison Pape and Nikki Biddings with Dr. Gutierrez give a presentation on how they're doing a lot of professional development that focuses on collaboration, both on across the grades, but also across core content. And having regularly scheduled conferencing periods together means that they need to have conferencing space available to them. And so this was just some extra square footage that we were able to find that we really think is going to enhance that sort of feature and protocol that they're doing. But with what we saw over at Pieper Ranch, we wanted to dedicate collaboration space for these grades. One of the nice things about putting that collaboration space right in the middle, though, is if you notice the size of that compared to a classroom, if there is significant growth in the next, 10, 15, 20 years where the district wants to consider actually constructing additional classrooms to support that, there is space within here to do so. The nice thing is that we've also added one additional classroom per grade level already in this concept. So they've already got one extra classroom as it is right now, but then the ability to possibly add one to maybe two small classrooms if they need it. The third classroom house is the one kind of across the mall area, and it's very similar in concept to the other ones. It's got the integrated science, the teacher resources close at hand, and dedicated collaboration space. So when we start talking about the collaboration space, we started thinking about, what are these spaces actually going to look like? And with all of these classrooms opening out to it, we really wanted to make sure that they're spaces that are warm and welcoming. These high windows that you see up here that bring some of that natural daylight from the exterior windows into that collaboration space. We're currently looking at ways to possibly do maybe some sliding glass walls so that instead of just doors being open to that collaboration space, you could have a folding partition almost that would really open up that classroom to the collaboration space and really promote a lot of flow between. This is just another view looking from the science classrooms back out. Having a teaching wall within that collaboration space is important as well, so that teachers are able to support some sort of learning mechanism. Bill, is that chat, are those comments from the chat that I keep hearing?
No, I'm watching the chat. I don't see any.
That, Robin, that may have been me. We had a trustee that got disconnected, so I was chatting with Michael, making sure
okay.
back in.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't somebody asking some questions, and because I can't see the chat, I'm in presentation mode. So, okay, very good. So if we move on to the CTE and special ed wing, this is the old science wing. So we've taken a lot of the spaces and really have tried to do interior renovations and not move a whole lot of walls, because the spaces for a CTE or a SPED program are actually really well sized for that. So in this bottom corner, we're going to have the essential academics. So they've got their working kitchen and laundry area and their fully accessible restroom. There's a small classroom here and another small classroom here. And in between is going to be kind of a communal office for some of those special ed employees that visit the campus. The behavioral classroom is right here. One of the nice things that we were also able to do is take that prep room that kind of sits there right now, and we subdivided it up to be able to have either quiet time space or just some additional storage, and even some more faculty restrooms over here. Along the northern edge of this wing, what we did is the 4 classrooms that are there right now, we're going to basically leave them sized the way they are right now, but they're going to work as kind of flexible CTE spaces. So the outer 2 classrooms are going to be more of a computer lab setup, and then the inner 2 classrooms we're going to have as kind of a workshop makerspace sort of function. So the classrooms are sized to be able to hold, you know, desks as well. So if it needed to be a principles of manufacturing classroom one year, it can definitely do that. But then being able to flex and be a robotics lab the next semester, it's got the ability to do that. This is going to be kind of the big hardwired computer lab on campus. And currently the computer lab sits over by the athletic area. We're actually bringing that instructor and his program over to this area, which kind of sets up athletics for some improvements on its side. I should have been clicking through this as I was talking. So the maker spaces, having flexible CTE spaces, special ed programs, sometimes there is some additional privacy that's needed for those functions. And so being able to have that, teacher resources close at hand. Also having outdoor access, which especially for special ed buses and some of the students that are more mobility challenged, having a separate more dedicated access point into the classroom or into the school is sometimes good. But the other thing is we're solving the problem of that building being separated and the fact that nobody wants to go over there during a rainy monsoon. So we're making an internal connection so that everything is able to be connected under one roof. For the cafeteria, you may notice that we're actually proposing that this is a new build and we're infilling in between the 2 northern wings, the fine arts wing and the 200 classroom wing. We are promoting or providing enlarged interior dining, can seat anywhere from 530 to 550 students. An enlarged kitchen as well. Service yard actually being at the back of the school rather than the front of the face. Having a stage or platform that will encourage performances and having potential to have large audiences. When we look at that cafeteria space, we start to begin to imagine what that could look like. Popping that roof up to get windows up along here. We call those clear story windows, but that brings in a lot of natural daylight without having to have necessarily the security issue of having glass down at a human level. And then if you look back from the serving area back towards the entry, these are going to be the 2 entry points. Having dedicated restrooms within the cafeteria as well was important. Moving on over to fine arts. So fine arts, you will notice that we are renovating it in place, but we are proposing under this concept that it's basically getting almost a complete gut and renovation. So we are moving some of the programs around, and by doing that, we are able to build new walls, and with new walls come enhanced acoustics, which I understand is a problem at the current fine arts wing. We are actually infilling that internal courtyard that kind of sits there right now between fine arts and athletics. We're going to infill that, and it's actually going to be the mariachi suite. Again, having the stage right there is going to do a lot for encouraging and really supporting the fine arts program. Having shared sound condition rooms really gives the ability to provide kind of a nicer upgraded feature, but making it available to all programs. And then finally, plenty of fine arts storage. Now, I kind of say that tongue in cheek because nobody ever seems to have enough storage, but at least every single program will have their own dedicated storage space that's close to them. Moving on to athletics, this is another function that we are renovating in place. So when I mentioned that we're moving the CTE computer lab over to the old science wing, we can now take that square footage and actually bring the weight room inside the building versus in the portable that's out there right now. We're going to be renovating the locker rooms, really kind of just giving it a refresh, new finishes and new fixtures. With new fixtures, we're addressing the accessibility of those restrooms and showers as well. We're able to enlarge the lobby and provide actually dedicated concession space for that lobby and still maintain a separate entrance, which I think is going to be important for hosting after hours games and any other sort of event that may be in the gym. Also, by doing the infill of the mariachi suite, we are extending the interior corridor all the way basically to the end of the practice gym and current band hall wing. And really that just provides some more internal circulation. But what it also allows us to do is provide that half wall breather corridor space at the practice gym, which was a nice feature that we saw at both of the schools that we toured. We knew that we weren't going to be able to do that necessarily at the competition gym because, you know, the bleachers are all right up along here and there's just not a lot of space to be able to do that. But we are able to do something similar at the practice gym. Turning more towards the interior, we're actually going to take that open-aired internal courtyard and enclose everything and convert it into the library and media center. We are making it a dedicated library, so it's going to have walls to be able to close it off. But with a lot of glazing and glass there, we are able to make it a very open and inviting space. And it also allows us to put student work on display, whether it's these display cabinets that are flanking the sides, or it's just windows along the front in front of small Greek tables to kind of show students at work. There's increased room for the stacks and the computer bank, so we don't have to try to determine who gets the most amount of square footage. Dedicated support space for the library, so a workroom, a librarian office, and storage for both books and media material. And again, a nice thing about putting it here is that we're able to get some nice close proximity to the front office and administration, and still providing some additional faculty restrooms. So from the main mall area, this is one of the entry points of the library. So this would be kind of standing here looking towards this entry. In the main mall area, we are also proposing to pop the roof up a little bit and provide some more of those clear story lights. That's going to be really important, especially for a space like the library that's kind of internal and is not going to have any exterior windows to the outside. So relying on that borrowed natural light is going to be really important and will make a big impact in that space. Once you're in the library, this would be if you were, let's say, standing in front of the circulation desk looking back towards that entry. That was the entry we were looking at in the previous shot. So really having a blend of, you know, stack area, soft seating, small group opportunities, and kind of traditional computer benching. If you flipped it around and stood on the other side, this is what you might see. So the circulation and librarian's desk is back here. All of these rooms back here are those support spaces I talked about, the workroom, her office, storage, etc. Having a you know, traditional setup with computer benches, because that's a very real need of library spaces, but also providing enough space along the side for plenty of stacks. And then you get a little sense of kind of some ideas of soft seating that we're thinking about. You may also notice that there's a little bit of a tree motif going on. We know that the trees are really important for the Briesemeister campus, and you may also have noticed that where we're proposing to do some of our additions, we're actually building on top of some of those larger trees. So we're actually working with some of our contacts in mill shops to figure out a good way to salvage and mill those trees so that they can be design elements within the building. But we also wanted to kind of bring in these faux tribute or tributes to those trees in other kind of playful ways throughout the school. So if we move over to the front office, what you'll notice is that everything is kind of consolidated, but it is also located where the current cafeteria and kitchen are. So with that, we actually sat down a lot with the front office and really kind of went through every single person who worked at the campus in some sort of administration capacity, and really kind of tried to make sure that we had a space for every single person. And by doing that, we think we checked all of those boxes, and we were actually able to carve out 2 additional offices within this front suite, because we know that staffing changes year to year. You may need to hire a couple of more, an additional AP or counselor, or in another year you may need to, kind of realign. But having that kind of flexibility is really going to be important, especially in this area. So like I said, office space for all positions, still maintaining a secured vestibule, making it a little bit larger so that it's a little bit more comfortable for folks that are coming in and they don't have to feel like they're waiting on top of each other. One of the other things that we added was a single user restroom within that secured vestibule, so that should somebody visit the campus and they are not quite yet ready to be buzzed back to wherever they're going, but if they need to use the facilities, they have the ability to do so while still being in that secured vestibule. And then finally, at least in this front office area, having plenty of conferencing and meeting spaces. So these are just 3 of the ones throughout the school, but this one right here being really adjacent to the principal's office, having one up here that is labeled for ARD, being right next to the ARD office, but the size of it can obviously change as the day or the semesters go by. And then having another smaller one that is in the counseling suite. Again, just really having some flexible meeting space for the front office staff. There's also the central lounge for teachers, so that they don't have to try to eat at their desk if they don't want to, and just really having some nice resources for them there. So if you're in the secured vestibule, this is a concept of what you might envision. Don't put too much in on the colors and the graphics just yet. This is kind of a first stab, just kind of a notional thought. But this would be the window that you would check in, you would hand them your driver's license, you would get scanned. These doors would remain locked, except for possibly during when school is the morning drop-off and the afternoon pickup. This door right here is the door to that single user restroom that I just talked about, and this is a door accessing the front office. This door and these doors would also be on control button release, so that depending on who is in that vestibule and where they need to go after they've been checked, they either come into the office or they're buzzed through to the rest of the campus. So we talked a lot about the building, but we haven't really talked a lot about the site just yet. So this is the way that the site currently is. And we know that it has its fair share of challenges. The parking in the front, the flow is maybe not intuitive. The parking spaces and the lots themselves are fragmented, and you might find yourself stuck in a lot with no parking spaces. And there's also a lack of queuing space up in the front for parent drop-off. So what we're proposing is that the new site plan will actually look like this. Some of the features here are, we are actually going to shift the main entry down towards the west. So this is currently where the main entry right now is. If you see that little line there, we're actually proposing that there would be a control gate, and we're going to shift main entry over here. And what that does, I'll come back to the parking in just a minute. It really allows us to increase the amount of queuing space for parents as they're dropping off students. That parking is also going to be really important for the campus as well. I think currently, last time we counted, it was about 97 parking spaces. This doubles it. It's 187. So really increasing the parking capacity at the campus and making it a parking lot that is a lot more streamlined and functional. The parent drop-off and pickup is going to be along the front here. This is that main front entry. This is the front office space that we talked about. Having a canopy that stretches this entire way so there is weather protection for students. Still maintaining the existing parking lot that's off to the side, just to add some supplemental faculty parking. You know, athletic teachers may find it easier for them to park on the side, for example. But also providing control points here, so it really encourages parents to use the new main entry. And so this would all be one way coming out, and then we would bring people out off of Governor Ireland Road. Along the back, we've got that dedicated service yard now in the back, so it is getting off of the main circulation path, so it's not impeding parents or bus traffic. Bus traffic is also able to be straightened out a little bit, which just makes for some easier maneuvering of the bus vehicles themselves. And then the bus drop-off and pickup is also along the back with a nice long canopy for weather protection. And the bus main entry is now going to be through here. This is the new cafeteria. So bringing students into the cafeteria at the beginning of the day, or holding them there until they need to be released to go get on the buses is an option. This is going to give you just a little bit of an idea of the kind of finishes that we're exploring for the exterior. We're looking for finishes that are very durable, maintenance friendly, that are going to withstand the test of time, but that are also appropriate for this region and are certainly things that you would expect to see on schools. We're not looking for anything flashy or super trendy or anything like that. You know, tried and tested is what we're after. So a lot of brick. We're going with 2 different tones of brick, as you can see here. We're going with some metal panel as well, 2 different colors and 2 different pattern shapes. The storefront windows, it's a very solid system, and utilizing insulated low E glazing is going to be important. In South Central Texas, we need to try to keep these interiors of these buildings as cool as possible. And another thing that we'll use when appropriate is some sort of sun shading aspect as well. Are there any questions so far? All right. So
Linda has one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Is she on, are you on mute?
You're good, Linda.
Okay, I'll wait till the end.
Oh, are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, I have a quick question. I just want to make sure, I know y'all didn't design the high school, but I have heard teachers say there's not a lot of built-in shelves or storage. And I just want to make sure that we've taken that into consideration here.
So one of the things that we are actually working on as well is doing the FF&E for AJB. And so aside from any sort of built-in or fixed shelving that we may do in the classrooms, we're also exploring additional storage furniture pieces that we can provide in the classrooms and in some of the other spaces to address that. That did actually come up. We had our FF&E kickoff meeting last week, and that was one of the things that was brought up. And so it is on our radar of things to address.
All right, thank you.
I had one more question.
Yeah.
How many entrances are there on this new design versus the current design?
I haven't.
I mean, you can email that information later on. I was just curious if there's more or less.
So there's going to be basically two main entrances. Obviously, this front one that we're looking at right now, and then the back side where the bus drop off is. All of the exit or all of the exterior access points, though, are going to have their hardware. Either if it's an existing door, the hardware is going to be replaced, and obviously, if it's a new door, it's going to have new hardware. But all of that will be on. It'll be tied into the security system. It will be exit only, no re-entry. We'll work with the district on selecting which doors get card reader access as well, because we do recognize that sometimes we have to have additional doors that have that kind of overriding unlocking capability.
We did reduce the amount of exterior doors.
We'll do a count and we'll get that to you. So
That's fine. Thanks.
anything else? All right, I'm just gonna walk around the building real quick just so that you can get a sense of what the project will end up looking like as we move forward. So this is that front entry, bringing a really tall canopy, bringing it out towards the lower canopy. This is the one that's gonna be lining the parent drop-off. Does two things. Obviously, it provides an additional feature of weather protection, but it really identifies that entry point. So it really does minimize folks being kind of lost when they come to the campus, and really shows them, hey, this is where you come in. As we kind of move around, there's that entry point that we just saw. This is one classroom science wing. This is the other one. This is that workroom and conferencing space in between those two classroom areas. This is just another view of that science component as well. If you were standing in the parking lot looking back on a sunset day, this might be the image that you see. This kind of shows how we're now at the back of the building. So this is the third classroom wing, but this is the old science building, which is now going to be the CTE and special ed. So you can see how the two different building types are beginning to tie together, and they still look very harmonious together. We're not building something that's going to be a dramatic departure from what is currently out there. If you went across the bus loop and stood in that grassy area, this is that outdoor secured plaza area. This is that third classroom wing. Here's that second entry that I was referring to, Mr. Guerra, with the bus drop-off and the tall canopy for that drop-off. And this is just a close-up view of it again. Again, that really tall canopy to signify this is where the entry point is, so that there's really no confusion about when you get off the bus, where do I go? And then you can see a little tail end of the canopy that'll kind of stretch along that bus drop-off area. This is another view of it, so you can see the tall canopy in the distance, and then the extent of the drop-off canopy right here, but also giving you a sense of the size and the scale of that service yard. Dumpsters being out here, which have good proximity to the cafeteria and the new kitchen. This is the new kitchen right here. But also having proximity to that tech shop, that workshop in the fine arts wing. As you come back around the building, these are the locker rooms. And then this pop-up right here is your existing competition gym. Here's the practice gym in the background. And then this is the third, I guess that would be the third main entry, which is the after hours entry to the gym and the athletic component. So not quite as tall of a canopy, but something that really also signifies that that is an appropriate entry point when the doors are open. Obviously, when it's not open for an event, those doors would still be locked and people would be directed to the front. This corner right here, this is the windows in that principal's conference room on the corner there. And this doorway right here is a direct exit out from the principal's office, just to kind of orient everybody. So this is that athletic entry and the kind of the shorter canopy, and this is that taller one leading into the main entry. So even if somebody were to accidentally come here and the doors are locked, coming around to the real front isn't, it's not a far walk. And then just some aerial shots of what the new build will look like with the expanded parking and the enhanced and elongated queuing space. Along the back, the bus straightened out. And then just a different shot as you circle the campus. And then here as well, that queuing space here, but still maintaining the existing parking lot. So really, we kind of went back and thought, did we check as many of those boxes as we could? And we think, you know, given the fact that, you know, we are still dealing with an existing building, we're having to renovate, you know, an existing structure, and there's limits to what we can do, but we think for the most part, we checked a lot of those boxes in ways that we feel pretty happy with. So before I get into phasing, are there any questions so far? Because all of that might sound great, but then you're like, how are we going to build that and keep the campus open and operational?
I have a couple questions.
Yes, yeah.
The secured outdoor student area, can you talk about that a little bit?
So I know it doesn't look secured right now because this rendering, the fence just kind of stops, but the fencing will continue. And right now we're showing that this would be some sort of concrete hardscape. We are still discussing with district staff as well as the campus on the appropriate extents of that and what sort of features should be in that plaza. You know, what we saw over at Resnik were basketball goals, but they were fortunate that their plaza was in between the gym and, you know, they had a buffer before it got to any sort of classrooms. Unfortunately, this kind of leads into what I was just talking about, that sometimes there's only so much you can do with an existing building, but we've got a classroom wing right here, and then we're going to have classes, the CTE classes right here. So we really want to be careful that we're not, you know, putting a basketball backstop right in front of that science window. That's not going to be good for anybody. And we're also dealing with a single-story building too. So there's also the issue of balls potentially being thrown up onto the roof and things like that. So we're still trying to figure out what exactly is appropriate for that space, but the notion that there is a space that we can provide some sort of outdoor secured space, whether it's for just hopscotch or something, you know, we'll figure it out. Bring back hopscotch, I say. So.
And then I had one more. When you're in that essential academics classroom, how far away is the nearest exit if there was a fire drill or something?
Well, they have an exit in their classroom.
Okay.
So
awesome.
It's that those existing science classrooms on that part of the building have direct doors leading outside because of the size of the rooms, which was another reason why we thought, hey, this actually works pretty well to be some sort of special ed program, because it provides them a secondary access, whether it's just for a convenience thing of daily drop in, drop off, or as you mentioned, in case of an emergency.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Glenda. I'm on my phone now. So I have a couple of questions. First of all the existing walls inside Breezy at the present time, are all of those going to be gutted?
Yeah, practically almost all of them. Yeah.
Right, because they're all like makeshift portable walls, so
yeah,
they're all coming down.
For sure the ones in the classrooms, maybe some of the ones that are in the corridor that are current exterior walls that may then become interior walls because of how we're putting on the addition. Some of those might stay, but all of those classroom walls that you know, only go up to right below the ceiling and you can hear somebody on the other side knocking. All of those are being replaced.
Okay. Robin, the other question I have, the elective area that's backing up to the cafeteria, is there a space there for the Spanish classes, or are those going to go back with the special ed?
You may have to, let me get back to a floor plan here. Can you ask your question again?
The special ed wing, the one that's the old science social studies wing, is that where the science classes, the Spanish class is going to be located, or is that going to be located in that purple area?
You mean Spanish as far as
the foreign an elective?
Okay, the foreign language elective. I would imagine that those are going to be somewhere in these orange classrooms here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The other question, the practice gym, the one that the half wall.
Yep.
Is that gonna, during basketball season? I know that that practice gym was used for the 7th grade boys and girls basketball games. Is there gonna be seating available in that practice gym for spectators? And I'm not expecting a lot of seating, but
we haven't planned for any seating right now. That is something though that if we want to, we can explore that further and see. I don't know if we've got room for it unless it's like almost like only a 2-row, right?
yeah, that's what they have at Barnes. It's like a 2 or 3 row seating.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what I've seen has happened in the last couple of years, that the practice gym is being used for the 7th and 8th grade boys and girls basketball games.
Okay.
And thank you so much for the trees and being able to utilize them somewhere else. But what's the total number of trees that we're going to lose? Do y'all have that number?
7 large ones.
7 large ones.
7 large ones?
Yes.
Okay.
Are they all in the front?
They are all
The current front, I guess.
it's all these.
Right.
And this one, but all the ones that are up along here and obviously over here are remaining.
Okay. And there is lighting included in the football field, correct?
Right now, no.
Oh, I thought that was part of the bond proposal.
I don't believe so. In fact, I might actually see if Bill might chime in on that. I'm just making some notes here real quick.
It was not part of that original plan on this one to renovate athletic fields, but we've been having discussions about what that might do in the price, possibly taking it as a extra to see what it costs and see if it's something that can be done within the scope of the building amount.
Okay.
The budget.
And on the athletic end, what's happening to the present concession stand that is used during football games?
Concession stand was not being renovated at this point.
Is it going to be torn down?
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. No?
It is not being torn down.
Not being torn down? Okay.
Right.
And the greenhouse, is it going to be, I'm sorry. I've got my phone and my computer going now. Okay. I'm sorry.
The question was the greenhouse. What's going to happen to the greenhouse?
We are currently not addressing anything over in that greenhouse area under this project.
So it would remain until
Yep.
further plans come along.
Current
Yeah.
state. Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, there's Glenda. I had a question about the CTE SPED building.
Uh-huh.
It looks like when you look at that, there's a lot of space to the north and the south of that building. Is that just a space that we thought we might be able to use further down the road if we have to put in more classrooms?
Yeah, I think we wanted to make sure that we preserved a little bit of a buffer and some options for y'all if you wanted to build, because there's some natural capabilities here of extending a hallway and doing an addition back here. There's also some natural expandability this way as well.
Okay,
So not
thank you.
to paint y'all into a corner or anything, but really providing some natural areas where additions can be done.
All right, thanks.
Mhm. There's also a natural space back over in this area as well, should it come up.
Robin, it's Glenda again.
Yeah.
The tennis courts, what's happening to them?
So we are relocating them. We just haven't quite figured out the right spot for it. But we're thinking is that it might go over in this area. But we want to look at the grades a little bit more carefully, because I think you can see from this image, there's a lot of ponding that's happened here over the years. And we don't want to put new courts on a spot that's going to experience similar drainage issues. So
Right.
we're having our civil engineer look at this area a little bit more carefully. We've also tentatively thought about the space across the road, but that I think is going to be more problematic than over here because of, again, the grading over there and the way the whole site drains.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be replaced because, as you can see, we are building on top of them. But we just haven't finalized the location just yet.
Okay.
This is James. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As well as, that portable there is a weight room that is going to be incorporated into the facility itself. So that portable will end up going away as well, though, right?
So this portable should, there won't be a need for it anymore because the weight room function is going to be in the building. And then even though it's not shown on here, the 4 portables that are out here at the end of the project won't be needed anymore either. Well, I haven't gotten
I just wanted to make sure that the Board of Trustees knew that weight room was going back into the main facility.
Yes, sir. Good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
And the only other concern and it's not an architectural design concern, it's more within the master schedule itself, Dr. Gutierrez, is when the lunches are scheduled, they're not going to be able, the fine arts classes like theater mainly would not be able to function during the lunchtime because of needing the stage area. Am I correct on that, or have they even looked into that?
So I might just answer that really quickly. The drama department is going to have their own dedicated classroom adjacent to the stage. So yeah, while in a lunch period, the stage itself might be noisy and you can't really rehearse on it at that point, they do have a dedicated classroom that they will be able to use during lunch periods.
Okay. All right.
They'll have that space, and typically what you don't see is theater in a middle school that has a stage in the cafeteria. You don't see them utilizing it typically. Now we do right now because our theater doesn't have the space to practice, so they use that area, that courtyard area currently.
Right. Okay.
Right. And most of those rehearsals will be at the end of the day or after in evenings.
So I might just
if you're having just a regular drama class and you're having them put on skits or practice UIL stuff, it may be happening during the day.
Yeah.
I can see them utilizing. Okay, thank you. I'm excited. I want to be there when the loading dock goes down. I'm going to start a watch party.
We'll let you cut the ribbon, Glenda.
Thank you.
The first shovel in the ground. Well, you do bring up a good point, because the fine arts is getting like completely reworked. So I might just point out where everything is. The 2 art studios are going to be right here in the front. And then, as I mentioned, the drama classroom space right next to the stage. The tech or scene shop will be still here in the back. Choir is going to be right here. Band 1 and Band 2 still maintain their existing spaces with some improvements. And then the mariachi, the new mariachi hall will be right here.
Oh, okay, and there is an office for that director.
Yeah, they've got their office here, the band office is here, choir office here, art, they're officing basically in their room, but they have shared storage with their kiln, and then the drama office is right here.
Oh, looks good.
I had a question.
Yes.
I know security is going to be a main component of this design, but I guess maybe this Bill's question for Bill also. Is Pacheco reviewing those prints also? Or somebody in their security office?
Really haven't had Pacheco review the plans. We've worked with the campus administrators on sight lines and areas where people are stationed. I mean, we could have him come look at them.
I was just thinking because of his background. You
Sure.
know, I asked about the entrances earlier because I was more concerned about someone that's not supposed to be there trying to get in from the outside in.
Sure. You know, we've relied on the architects and their design with their on security features, but you know, having Mr. Pacheco look at the layouts, and that would be perfectly good idea.
Yeah. No, I'm sure the architects they're doing a real good job on making it a main component of it. But yeah, it wouldn't hurt to add someone, a security officer. That's all.
Ms. Moreno, to answer one of your questions from earlier, there is currently already a, is that 2 rows? Or is that 3? Looks like 3. It looks like there's already a 3-row bleacher set in the practice gym right now.
Okay, and that's against that wall that borders the weight room then?
Yes, correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's what I couldn't see. But the other concern that Alejandro had also about people coming in and out of the building with the card readers, with those kinds of things that you all are putting into place, would really beef up the security. My concern was if there was an active shooter that brought in something, one of the students, you know, is there a clear line of sight as you walk the hallways and stuff like that? That's one of those things that we just don't want to think about, but in real life we have to think about. So,
well, what I will say on that is the way that the school is currently laid out, there's a natural, there are natural entry points to grade levels, and there are easy ways to provide, as you can kind of see right here, there's some pretty easy ways to provide some access control or compartmentalization within the building itself. So we can explore that further. Fine arts is already kind of pretty well defined, so we can just look at the classroom area a little bit more.
right. When I was there, my concern was not so much the people coming in, because we're so we're further out.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So you'd almost have to really want to go there,
Yeah.
or have a necessity to go there. But we didn't have much pedestrian traffic going in and, you know, around the area. So
Good comment. Yep.
thank you. Appreciate all your hard work. It's good.
Well, the hard part is only just beginning because I'm going to go through the phasing right now with y'all.
Well, let me ask one more question before you go
Yes,
forward. In the, right when the entry to the school and the library is over to the right, you said you were going to lift the ceiling up a bit.
Yep.
I don't know how much you meant, but I can't say I've been to Barnes many times and I've heard, I think every time I go there, somebody's complaining about that big, open, tall area that we're air conditioning for no reason and things like that. So I just want to make sure we're not creating another type of situation.
Right now, we're looking at about a 20-foot tall space down this. This is that main entry right here, this hallway,
Mm-hmm.
and then the bisecting mall area would be about 20 feet tall, and Barnes is
Pretty tall, but it's, yeah.
we'll look and see what it compares to against Barnes. So
Okay.
what we do have on, when you say that you're hearing things about the space over at Barnes, is it from like a noise control point of view, or is it another?
It's just basically wasted space. There's a lot of space up there that we're air conditioning, and if we had all that space up above, we could have used that for classrooms or something like that.
Got it. I don't really know if it's going to be the same issue here. We're mostly raising that, I hate saying this, raising that roof up to get some natural light into those internal spaces, because especially in this mall area, you know, it's so internal to the school
Mm-hmm.
that without light, it can feel very dark.
Feels like a dungeon.
Yeah.
Right here over and over again.
Well, how many feet are you going to raise it? Do you know the height?
8
8
feet.
feet.
8 feet.
Yeah.
But 4 of it is glass,
Okay.
and it's
All right.
continuous. Glass.
Continuous glass. All right.
In fact, if you go into the mall now and you look up, you can see where there used to be skylights.
Yes.
That's since been boarded up.
Right.
So we know from talking with Mr. Pizzagna that skylights were not going to be an option here, but by doing a clear story where the glass is vertical, you don't have the same sort of roof leak issues that you would have with a skylight, but it still gets the benefit of getting that natural light into those spaces.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. Let me get back to the presentation. Okay, so yeah, how are we going to do all of this? So along the right side of your screen is kind of a very abbreviated calendar, so to speak, and it's mostly divided up by semesters with summer breaks identified in there. Sorry, I have to, all of y'all's faces were over the calendar on my side, so I gotta move y'all. So when we're finishing up the project at the end of this year, and we're going out for bids, and the goal will be to start construction in the spring semester of 2021. We're thinking it's probably going to be about February-ish that dirt might be able to start turning, but for purposes of this discussion, we're going to keep it kind of very high level right now. So spring semester of 2021, start construction in all of those areas that are highlighted in gold. So you'll notice that we're focusing on the areas where we're doing the new additions. The other thing that you might notice is all these gray rectangles that are around the building. These are all portable buildings. These 4 of them are there right now. We're going to be bringing in one additional one on the side this may not be the exact location of it. It might be closer down here. We're going to be bringing in 2 additional portables over in this area, and then a larger portable out here, which is going to be one of those more modular type buildings to house the administration area. Because you see, like, our first construction phase is going to be taking over the front office area. I'm going to preface this next series of slides by saying that we just had our first real sit down with Dr. Diaz late last week, and kind of introduced him to the project and introduced him to the phasing. So we have some things that we need to sit down and kind of do a deeper dive with him as far as where classes are going to be moving, just to make sure that this phasing makes sense and can be as streamlined as possible. Nobody likes an overly complicated phasing plan, and so the more that we can streamline it, the better. One of those things that we're going to be looking at is by bringing in these extra portables, we might be able to get one of these classroom wings kind of emptied out sooner and be able to start a little bit faster on the construction. But what I'm going to show you in the phasing is kind of like a worst case scenario right now. So we're hoping that we can just improve upon it.
Robin, I want to share with the board that all the portables have been moved. They're in place now.
Great. Yeah, so you can drive out there and see them right now. Okay, so we're going to start in the spring semester, and basically we're going to start doing all of the new major building components. The other thing that we're going to be doing by tackling the front office and entry point right now, we're moving administration function to that larger portable I was talking about out here. And we're actually going to shift the main entry of the middle school during this first part of construction to the entry over by the gym area. So we're kind of getting all the visitors away from the active construction site and into kind of just redirecting them. When we hit that first summer, we're going to do the renovations of the athletic locker room areas, and we're going to start doing the addition right in here in between the science wing and the 200 wing. The reason we can't really start that sooner is because we need to maintain connectivity between those 2 buildings during the school year. So this really does need to be an element that happens over the summer. And when summer is over, we're going to have that connection reestablished while the contractor's still working in that other component that's still being worked on. This is that area that hopefully, if we can make the classroom numbers work out correctly, if this can be vacated earlier, it might actually start work either in that very first construction phase or that summer phase. But by the time you come back for the fall semester of 2021, your athletic lockers and restrooms in that component or in that wing are all renovated and occupied. So this type of construction activity and all this gold area maintains throughout that fall semester and into the spring semester of 2022. And then when we break for summer in 2022, we are taking over that existing science wing, we're taking over the remainder of that classroom wing, and we're taking over the new, the existing cafeteria and internal courtyard, because we have finished the new cafeteria and we've finished one of the classroom wings. So we're able to supplement these spaces with the new parts that are complete. So this is summer, and then when the school year starts again for the fall, the renovations of that classroom wing are done as well. So you've got 2 brand new classroom wings that are open and occupied by students in addition to the cafeteria. The renovation work in the science building and in that front existing cafeteria space are ongoing throughout that fall semester and then the spring semester of 2023. When the summer hits for 2023, by then the renovations in that new front office and library should be done. So front office staff can move in. The contractor will kind of take over a lot of these other portions that are real interior renovation heavy and really go to town over that summer break, especially in the fine arts area, because when school resumes for the fall semester of 2024, he has to have all of those renovations in that wing done and complete so that the fine arts program is moving into their renovated new home. For the remainder of that fall semester and then into the spring semester of 2024, the contractor is focusing his efforts on that third classroom wing and the mariachi infill and corridor connection. And then summer break of 2024, you see it kind of highlighted in green. That's kind of our buffer time. Hopefully the contractor is done at the end of spring semester, but if we need to extend into that summer for any number of reasons, maybe it was a rainy couple of years or something like that, we've got some buffer time built into there to account for that. I know that was a whole lot that I just threw at you, and it might have just gone whoo right over your head. But are there any questions specific to the phasing that I might be able to answer?
Not, Robin, this is Glenda. Not so much to the phasing, but are the original bathrooms that are in that main foyer right now across from the library, are those staying intact?
So the ones that are flanking the gym?
No.
Or the ones, oh, I'm sorry, yes, across from the original library, yes. We are completely renovating those. So there will still be restrooms there, but they will be completely new restrooms.
And the ones that are in the present science wings, those are going to be renovated also?
They will be, but to a lesser extent. If you recall, we're carving off part of that to make some
faculty ones, right?
Yeah, so we'll likely on the student side, we might have to move a couple of fixtures to account for that, and then probably address maybe finishes. So.
Okay, and then the ones that flank the gyms on either end of the competition gym will remain there?
Those are going to remain as restrooms. Are we doing any more from those? And we're going to update finishes and replace fixtures in there as well.
Okay. Thank you.
This floor plan is just, it's a little outdated from what I showed you earlier in the presentation, because that bank of restrooms right now that's outside of where the new cafeteria is going to be, one of the feedback comments that we got pretty early on was that these restrooms and these restrooms, it was, even though by plumbing code standards, there was enough restroom fixtures to serve the population, they weren't distributed in a way that was beneficial for the student population. So we actually added a series of student restrooms right here. That's why this teacher work area isn't there anymore in that plan that I showed you earlier. In fact, it's now down in here.
I just wanted to make a little side comment, which is it's really hard, I think, for people to envision how you have school going on while all these renovations are taking place. And over in San Marcos, they have a very similar thing going on right now with one of their middle schools, is Miller Middle School. Mm-hmm. And I've been there a couple of times this year. So if we, maybe Dr. Gutierrez could reach out to their superintendent, and if any of the trustees would like to just go and get a look at what that is and how the teachers and the administrators have to work all around. I know over there the administrators are constantly moving from one part of campus to the other, and they're located in classrooms right now. So it's challenging, and it's challenging for the teachers. So it might be advantageous for us to put eyeballs on something like that.
I agree. And the question that's going to come up is, why is this project taking so long? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of eagerness and excitement surrounding this project, but you're working around 800 students. And so this isn't going to be complete in 2 years. And I know it seems like a long ways away. It'll get here fast, but when you're looking around this number of students, it is going to slow it down. And Ms. Thomas Jimenez, we will look at that possibility of going to tour that site in San Marcos.
Okay, thank you.
Linda Duncan here. I was actually going to ask that same question. I can foresee people asking, why is this taking so long? Is there a possibility that it could be finished sooner than proposed?
I think the real potential would be is if we can work with Dr. Diaz and campus and district staff to make sure that the portables, the supplemental classrooms that we're bringing in are sufficient to be able to turn this wing over to the contractor earlier, because that's going to be like an early domino that falls, and that kind of triggers everything else. And if we can speed that along, then the rest of the project speeds along. I don't want to say that it would shave off, 2 years, but we might be looking at like half a year or maybe even close to a year, so 9 months or something. So any little part that we can do to accelerate that, we're definitely investigating. And we also, we tried not to overcrowd the campus with portables, because we know that has a burden as well. So trying to strike that balance of, can we bring in a couple of more to offset, a construction phase while not having, 75% of the student population in portables during any given time. The other thing that we've done in working really closely with the campus and also with Mr. Lewis and Mr. Pizzagna is trying to limit the moving that certain programs have to do. So if a program has to be displaced because of construction, like the front office, we're only asking them to move to a temporary home once. So we're not having them move one time and then a semester later they're moving again before they make it to their final home. They're just making that move once, and then the next time they move, they're moving into their new home. So really trying to limit the inconvenience from the users on that part as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I had a question on the electrical and the plumbing. The
Mhm.
plumbing, is it still on the slab? The old plumbing?
Yeah, it's below the slab. Mhm.
So as far as the electrical, how much of it is going to be new percentage-wise, approximately?
Practically all of it, with the
Okay.
exception of maybe in the old science wing, we might be able to use a lot of the circuits over there, the athletics, depending on the age of those circuits. Really the areas where we're doing where we're not moving a lot of walls, if we can reuse the electrical services for those areas, we intend to do so, provided that they're not a life safety hazard. We also know that with buildings of a certain age, those circuits have lived a life, or they were built in a very different time than we live in now. So we're taking all that into account with our electrical engineer.
Okay. No, ideally, I guess it would be better to have all new electric and all new plumbing, but I know you're going to be limited with the plumbing.
Yeah, and we are replacing all the mechanical systems as well. So all of that will get replaced as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Duncan again, and you guys are with the project till it's over, is that correct?
Yes, we are there until, actually, contractually, we're there until 1 year after final move-in. But, I can't tell you how many projects I still go out and visit, years after they've moved in. And not for anything bad, just, checking in, seeing how they're doing. I want to make sure that we want to make sure that clients stay happy. So, and if we can learn lessons from past projects that we apply to current projects, that's the best way to continue to improve upon our profession as well. So,
well, that's a silver lining. Thank you.
All right. Well, I know I don't want to belabor the issue too much, but nobody's asked about it yet. So we did have a budget, 39 million when we started out. We are tracking a little high. So we're about a little under 4% over, but I think there's some things that, we've kind of talked about on why that is. I mean, one, it's a complicated project, that type of phasing and renovation is going to be just naturally a more complicated and more expensive project. But we also, we did a lot more than was initially identified in the long range facility plan. Things like, the renovation of the fine arts area or the integration of science into the new classroom wings. Those were things that at the time we were doing the long range facility plan, we couldn't have anticipated. Those were kind of a natural byproduct of really talking with the campus and talking with the district about what were the best steps forward. But, there are some silver linings on that. We were able to bring the stadium project significantly under budget when it bid. So, there's some potential savings there that you might consider for this project. What we saw with the stadium project is that right now we're in a pretty good bidding climate. The stadium project, if it told us anything, told us that people want to get a foot into Seguin ISD. They want to do work with y'all. And so I fully expect that a project of this size, which is double in projected value, even more than that, triple. Wait a minute, am I doing my math right?
Yeah, what they came in at. Yeah.
Is going to be really enticing and attractive to contractors out there. And then I also don't think that we can overlook that, COVID-19 and what it's done with bond elections for this year, especially in this region, with those elections that have been pushed out or postponed indefinitely. Contractors are looking to find projects to secure work to keep their workforces employed. So I think I'm not scared of the fact that we're this much over. If it was higher, if it was like 5 or 6 million, it would be a different story, and likely we wouldn't have presented it to you in this light. We would have gone back to the drawing board, so to speak. But I think this is it's something that we feel comfortable with. We think the bidding climate is going to be favorable for y'all. And yeah, so, and keep in mind that, these are estimates. These are our estimates. These aren't numbers from the contractor. So they may be sharpening their pencils as we speak to really get that, most competitive price to really get their foot in the door. So.
Robin, this is Glenda. Just for my information, what does the acronym LRFP stand for?
Sorry, Long Range Facility Plan.
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah, you're
It's Denise, for anybody that's listening. FF&E, is that separate from this, and do we have an estimate for that?
FF&E is going to be part of that 39 million, and we are working on an estimate, a budget right now. I believe it's going to be around $2 million for this project. So, and we would budget it by taking the square footage of the facility and pretending that it's a complete new build, and then applying a multiplier to that construction value to kind of determine what an appropriate FF&E budget is, since we're going to be completely outfitting the entire building with a new FF&E package versus just isolated areas.
And then we used part of the food service. I don't want to call it surplus plus, but we had some funds in food service when we were doing the high school, and we used that for some of that. Do we have that option this time? That might be a Tony question.
Well, we, that was something we thought of and thought that we could. We're going to be running into probably the need to utilize some of those dollars because our child nutrition staff is not serving as many meals as they were with kids here and being reimbursed. So I don't think that is something that we should right now count on. And we'll be talking more in the coming weeks about budget, but we're gonna be there are some things that we're going to need to consider in the coming months as a result of COVID-19.
I think also the discipline breakdown on the right side of your screen is interesting because it tells us that the design is appropriately distributed, because traditionally an MEP scope of work should be anywhere from 25 to 30% of the value of work, and this is showing it exactly at 30% basically. And all the other disciplines, the structural and the civil, given what they are doing for the project, they are within the normal range of distribution for this project. So that tells us that our consultants are designing within line as well, and they're designing appropriately, and nothing is too excessive or being potentially under designed either. So. So with that, this is kind of the end of the AJB part of the presentation. So does anybody have any other questions specific to the project?
I just have a comment. As far as the duration of the construction process, another thing that we have to keep open mind is the variable of the cost of material. They won't be able to lock it in, so no one has control over that. So we just have to keep that in mind.
Yes, that is a good point.
Yeah, we experienced that on the high school a little bit, and a contractor gave some saving back to the district by doing an early buyout of some of the material. So we could think about it on this project as well, as try to buy out some of the material as early as we can.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions on AJB, I will move into Jefferson. So with Jefferson, just a kind of a snapshot of where we're at. Jefferson got a little bit of I don't want to call it a delayed start, but we didn't start the design at the same time that we started AJB, because the two projects, while they're both renovations of existing schools, the AJB project is by far a lot more complicated and involved than the project over at Jefferson. So Jefferson, we have completed the survey and pre-design. We're about 27% of the way through the design and bid phase, and it has also not started construction. What you may notice is that both Jefferson and AJB have a construction start of January 2021. And that's intentional. We want those two projects to finish up at the same time and to be bidding at the same time, because we actually will offer to contractors to be able to bid one project, the other project, or both. And that again speaks to some of this economy of scale, and a $42 million job the 39, well, it's not, anyways, a larger project is a lot more enticing to a contractor and to a certain caliber of contractor too. So that, we think that's really going to play in favor there. So all in, it would probably be about $35–36 million worth of work between the two campuses. And so we're hoping that that's really going to bring out some really grade A players to the field. Just a reminder, going back to the long-range facility plan, what was ultimately decided to be included in the scope. Jefferson was also one of those schools that was recognized to need some improvement sooner rather than later, so it made it to priority 1. But ultimately what was included in the bond was the renovations of the south and existing wings, which addressed mechanical systems, connectivity, some roofing issues, safety and security, and accessibility. So just as a reminder on the existing conditions, what we found is that the restrooms, for the most part, are not fully accessible. Some are better than others. There is currently an exterior connection between the two wings. So again, it's less than desirable to have students leaving a conditioned space to go into another. I will point out that this connection is also exterior, but it's got a very nice protected cover to it, whereas this one between the two classrooms is less protected. The HVAC systems on these buildings and some of the roof conditions are just aging. These are older wings. I think this wing was built in the 1980s and this is 1960s. So, and some of the other things we've noted is there's aging electrical and technology systems, and just like everything kind of comes and goes in and out of fashion, there's aging finishes as well. So our project scope for here, these are just color coded to indicate to us what the function of those rooms are. So anything that's in this orange is kind of a general education classroom. Their music classroom is right here, so it's color coded with the fine arts color. And their special ed program is up here, so it's got that kind of light orange. Anything that's in gray is like a storage or a restroom. And there is a teacher workroom down in here, so it's got that administrative function. So we're going to focus our accessibility upgrades on the restrooms that need it. All the restrooms that are in this wing meet accessibility standards. It's the ones that are in this wing that need some help. We're going to develop an internal connection between the two wings to really facilitate students going from one to the other without having to get into the cold or the rain. We're going to replace the HVAC system, the mechanical systems. We'll do roof repairs as needed. And then one of the things we've been talking about with district staff is that we can look at upgrading the electrical and technology systems and possibly some of the finishes as the budget allows, but really kind of identifying that those would be kind of bonus efforts if we can afford it, that it wasn't necessarily intended to be part of that original project scope. And so this is an image of what that connection might end up looking like. And the presentation on Jefferson is just very, very short. It's very, it's pretty straightforward on what we're doing. I will, again, kind of reiterate that whereas on AJB, we made it, or the committee really wanted to do as many of those renovations on that building in one single move or action. On Jefferson, the renovation of these two wings is kind of the first step in an overall campus-wide improvement plan. And I think that's why if we delayed upgrading the finishes, and to a certain extent, maybe the electrical and technology systems, it's not necessarily the end of the world, because this campus will have major work and additions done in hopefully a very near future. And those sorts of replacements can be done on a campus-wide approach versus trying to do part of it now and then coming back, you know, in a couple of years or whenever that project, you know, comes back up, and then trying to address it then, and then trying to make connection between the two, either from infrastructure, like from the electrical or technology systems, or just from an aesthetic look, because sometimes finishes, manufacturers discontinue colors, certain ones go out of business, you know, there's all different sort of things that can happen. So delaying the addressing of finishes and some of those other systems, I think could actually be more beneficial for the campus as a whole later on. So, any questions on Jefferson? There's not really a phasing plan right now because for the most part, a lot of this work can be done either during school because of staying out of kids' way, such as some of the roofing repairs, depending on the noise level and the amount of repairs that are needed. And then the connection wing should be able to be started in that spring semester, and it wouldn't affect functionality of any classrooms. And then the renovations of those restrooms, that's, you know, summer work. So we think a lot of that can be done in certainly less than a year. So. Well, with no questions, Bill, do you want me to move forward into the baseball, softball?
Robin, I'm going to come in.
Okay.
Trustees, I know we've had conversations about the baseball, softball, and we've wanted to explore the possibility of moving forward, hopefully soon, to complete the high school entirely. We've got the new high school, we have the new stadium, and our hope is to get the new softball, baseball facility so that we can have that entire project as a whole completed and then focus on our other campuses. In the coming weeks, we're going to be talking about our budget for next year. And I think as we continue conversations, we're going to really start to have to discuss the possibility of not being reimbursed for some of our extra costs that we are incurring with COVID-19. As you all know, the Texas economy is taking a huge hit, and that's concerning itself. And one of the things that we've all seen in the past that they take from first is education. In conversations with TEA and Region 20, we've kind of come together to talk about budgeting for next year. We do expect that we will likely experience a budget shortfall after the 21 legislative session. In fact, the Texas Comptroller has already indicated that he didn't really feel that HB3 could be sustainable. Now, it's our hope that the Texas economy can bounce back quickly as we hear it's going to reopen. But as a superintendent, I'm already making some decisions, budgetary decisions, in an effort to be proactive to avoid what we experienced, most of us back in 2011, as far as making cuts. And I know we've all become very excited about baseball, softball, but it is a real possibility that we will have to utilize fund balance for instruction, possibly for other expenditures that we weren't expecting to cover, such as child nutrition. There's so much uncertainty right now that I'm just going to be honest. It would be fiscally irresponsible to move forward and consider this at this time, just because there are so many unknowns. We've already talked about the likelihood of not being able to consider a salary increase. And in conversations with Region 20 superintendents, 100% have said they're not looking at salary increases for next year. However, I am taking actions in a proactive way, as I stated, so that we can do something for our staff to reward them, something that isn't recurring as far as a salary increase. But I feel confident that we will be able to do something based on some decisions, some difficult decisions that are happening right now. But there are just far too many unknowns to be looking at spending millions in the fund balance right now. However, I think in the coming months we'll have a better idea, hopefully. If not, but I still want to keep that at the forefront. Our community feels strongly about that. We feel strongly about that. That's why it has been something we've wanted to discuss, and it's my hope that we can continue those discussions. But I'm really concerned right now about what the next year or so is going to bring after the next legislative session, because unfortunately, education tends to take a hard hit. We were all excited about the additional funding that came in, and we were able to do some great things for our school district, for our students. But we are likely going to experience some type of budget shortfall. You know, as a school district, when you think about our tax collections and being able to get 98, 99%, how likely is it going to be at that level right now because of what we're experiencing? So those are conversations that we're having right now in the background internally, but conversations that we're having as superintendents. And I just felt like I needed to share that before we considered moving forward with that, just because of all of the unknowns right now.
Could we remind any citizens that might be watching this now or later where we are with that? We had budgeted designing the stadiums and the baseball and softball field. Can we just talk a little bit about where we are and how that would work if we aren't building those right now?
Well, it has certainly shown that that is something that is important to us, that we want to move forward with. And it's not too far down the road that we'll be looking at additional facilities projects. And it's my hope that in 2, 3, 4 years that the economy is going to bounce back strongly, and we can begin to address those additional facilities, such as completing Jefferson. But our hope is that prior to that, we can begin the work on the baseball, softball. We've already moved forward with working to get a design, and that's a huge step for us, and it is something that we have on our minds and certainly want to happen. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the community and the school district, something that was completely unexpected for all of us. You heard Robin talk about school districts having to reschedule or put off indefinitely bond elections. So we've all been caught off guard. And what I do want to let the community know is that this is something that's important. And as soon as we are in a position to be able to come back and move forward with those plans, we certainly will. Once we have a better idea on our our budget, because right now there are so many unknowns that we're having to make some very difficult decisions already, just in preparation for shortcomings.
Linda Duncan here. But we did pay to have those plans made. So those plans are ours, right? So they won't go away. We'll already have that portion of the project done.
So we, last March, we approved the selection of an architect and to draw up a proposal, but we have not approved funds for the actual design, like we saw today with AJB. We have not entered an agreement to pay the architects to go into that level of design. We just have I think we've shared this, the options and some price estimates for that, you know, how it would lay out, where it would sit, what's going to be included, but we have not approved funds to start the actual design of the facility.
Yeah, it's my understanding that a portion of the school funding comes from the oil and gas tax. So that if that's the case, all you have to do is just look at the stock market today and see what happened to the crude oil. And there's going to be a lot of uncertainty coming in the future. And that's what I've heard in the past also. The first things that the state starts looking at is education, which is not good.
That's absolutely correct. And in the coming days and weeks, we'll be communicating with you just some decisions we're going to have to make. And how does this tie into facilities? Well, it impacts whether or not we move forward with decisions to upgrade facilities. And this is one of those difficult decisions that I believe is that my thought is to table the discussion until we have a better idea, because every day we are learning something new. And as Mr. Guetta said today, if you look at the stock market, when it comes to oil and gas, that's grim news for sure. And we are unsure what tomorrow is going to bring. So I believe that we've got to be just as cautious as we possibly can moving forward. And as we're getting into budget season, just trying to be as conservative as possible.
Well, I think we certainly all understand the concerns, and tabling that discussion for now, I think, is a great idea. Everybody?
I agree.
In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, when we were building the agenda, we were not really at this point. A couple of weeks ago, we had the discussion on the agenda, obviously.
Right.
So things continue to evolve every day, and right now they're not evolving for the better.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts or concerns about that?
I think I agree with everybody. We should table it for a small amount of time. 6 months to a year, we'll have a better grasp of what's going to happen in the economy, what's going on in the community. There's a lot of people hurting in our community right now just because they can't work or different things like that. I think we really should table that for now and go forward when we have a better grasp of what's going to happen.
And we'll also have a better idea of what's going to happen in the legislature by that point in time as well. Okay. Well, I guess at this point then it's about time to wrap this up. Does anybody have any other questions or concerns for our architects or Dr. Gutierrez or Bill while we're all online?
We did have the school closure. When that was placed on the agenda, we weren't certain of what direction the governor was going to go. And now we know. So the purpose of that discussion was to talk about next steps for the district in the case that the governor made a decision to reopen. we were possibly going to have a discussion as to what we were going to do as a school district, but it's been decided and school will remain closed for the rest of the school year. And I just ask that everyone just stay tuned and pay very close attention to our website and social media, as we will be rolling out plans for library drop off to pick up supplies. You've got athletes who have items in their lockers. So there are so many questions that people are asking. I just want everyone to know that those conversations are taking place as far as graduation and senior awards. And so information will be coming out. We are on top of it right now, and feel very confident in our campus administrators. They have really done a good job of being proactive and flexible. Most importantly, I certainly want to thank our staff. They've been very flexible over the last 6 weeks. We've had to change how we operate from one day to the next, and I could not be just more blessed with the staff who is understanding and flexible and patient. And because of that, I feel confident that they are doing everything to meet the needs of our kids from a distance. And it's our hope that we open our doors in August and get to have our kids back in our classrooms.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay. Mr. Amador, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Duncan. All right. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right. So it is, looks like 8:32. We will adjourn this meeting and we'll see y'all next week.
Great seeing all y'all.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.